Hello, and welcome to Culture of Caring. I'm your host, Natalie Boyle, and really excited to be back again today talking again about collaboration. And just as a reminder, at Mommies in Need, we have our own definition of collaboration, and that is that we aim to create a vibrant community that works together towards our shared goals. And we recognize that in order to do that, we must listen to and value the input of all of our stakeholders. We believe in a mindset of abundance instead of scarcity and collaboration instead of competition. And today I have a guest on who I think really embodies this value. And I'm so excited to share the work that their organization is doing. So welcome Pat Smith from Serve Denton.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you for coming on today. Really excited to talk to you. So just start us off and tell us, what is Serve Denton? What do you guys do there?
Yes, so Serve Denton is a nonprofit center. There's about 539 of those in the country. We focus on health and human services. We started about 10 years ago, and right now we have about 21 partner agencies on a 5-acre campus in Denton, Texas, and we really put a lot of emphasis on collaboration and are really excited about what we're able to accomplish when everyone starts working together.
Yeah. So what are some examples of the kind of agencies that you have all
Right.
kind of housed in the same spot?
So we have Health Service of North Texas, which is a full healthcare provider. We have Children's Advocacy Center for North Texas. Right next door, we have Denton Community Food Center, which is a very large food pantry. We have Giving Grace, which works with families and individuals who are experiencing homelessness. We have MHMR of Denton County, works with children with developmental delays. Recovery Resource Center out of Denton County, which works with veterans with substance abuse issues. And so those are about 5 of the many organizations that we have.
And so is the idea that there's a lot of clients in common and to make it easier for them to get to it, or kind of how do the organizations work together to better the community? So
ultimately they referral between one another when necessary. That's not always the case. We measure that, and we have about 2,900 internet work referrals a year.
That's a lot.
Last year we saw 35,000 unique individuals on the property. And for example, Children's Advocacy Center works with families whose children have experienced the severe trauma of abuse. Rather than having to have their own food pantry, they send them literally next door and get them connected. Or if they need health care, they can literally send them next door and be seen by a full service healthcare provider. We have our own pharmacy on the property, our own lab, and all these other services that people often, there's the spoken needs and then there's the unspoken needs. Yeah. And so what happens is as we work with families, we learn about those unspoken needs, and there's immediate organizations we can refer them to. And that really is where we start to see the power of Serve Denton.
Yeah. And so what is the mission of Serve Denton itself?
Yeah, so our mission is to partner with nonprofits to help make services more accessible for people in need. The fundamental problem that we started off with, and I started the organization in 2011, was in my opinion, the brokenness that I saw in social services in Denton, where people often had to go from place to place to navigate a very complex system that, transportation was a barrier, just understanding how to get help and having no one to come alongside and help you through that journey. And so we basically created a one-stop shop. And then when people walk in off the street, they're met by a client greeter who works for me, and she helps connect them. She's not a case manager, but she does that warm handoff either on the property or out across the region.
Yeah. I love that. So you said you founded it, you kind of saw this need. How did that come about, right? Were you in social services? What is your story for how you began this?
Well, that's a really great question, and it's a very personal one. So my dad died in October 2009, and I retired from the Air Force in 2008. was making a lot of money but hated what I did. And out of my dad's death, I learned he had helped hundreds of people out of his restaurant when he was younger, my age. And when his death was announced in the paper, people from across the country posted on Facebook and talked about what Dad did for them. And when we did his memorial service on November 11th, 2009, people came from across the country to say goodbye. New York City, San Francisco, Atlanta, Dallas, Denton, Denver, San Antonio. And I was struck by all these people coming to say goodbye to my dad. And afterwards, I stopped and asked them, why did you come? And every one of them said the same thing. And they said, well, your dad saved my life. Because he fed them. There was no place for people who were hungry to get food in Denton at that time. It was just in the 80s. And I knew Dad helped people, but I didn't know how many. And so here I am, I'm in my Air Force uniform and, all this education experience, and I am convicted by my dad's life. And so right then I made a decision to stop doing what I was doing and go into ministry. And that took a year. And so December 2010, I went to work for Denton Bible Church. And they gave me a really unusual job. They basically said, go find out what we as a church can do to make a difference in the community. That was it.
Great job.
So I started talking to people, and after just a few months, I said, this is what we can do. So if we could use an excess building that we had and bring agencies together, then that would be a game changer for the community. And so that's what we started doing. Just me, and then I was introduced to another wonderful lady named Priscilla Sanders. And over the next year, we formed a board. We had 40-person board.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, which everyone thought we were crazy, but
especially at the very beginning of the organization.
yeah.
My goodness.
Well, we wanted transparency. We wanted broad community support, and it paid off. And we just started working and planning and identifying pain points and trying to solve problems. And that's my experience in the Air Force, is to be given a difficult problem and go solve it. And long story made short, we moved in our first tenants in 2014, and we went from 2 to 6 to 9, and then in 2017 we made an offer we couldn't refuse, and another organization wanted the building that the church leased to us, and the church basically gave us $1 million to give up that lease. We were paying $1 a year in rent, so we turned that into $1 million. We found another property to where we are now, bought that through the owner, and renovated part of it, and then turned that $1 million into $10 million through a program called New Market Tax Credits.
Okay.
So now we have a 5-acre property, 48,000 square feet, about a $10 million project.
That's amazing. And how fulfilling that must be for you too, and to be able to honor somebody you love in that way, and knowing that like every day when you go to work, that's what you're doing.
This picture sits right on the windowsill, so he's just always watching.
Well, I can't wait to come visit, and then I will get to see a picture of your dad.
You will.
What is his name?
Jim Smith.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it is, those of us that work in nonprofit, especially those of us that were crazy enough to be founders,
Right.
Typically there's something that creates that sea change in your life.
Absolutely.
Right? And where all of a sudden it's no longer enough
Right.
to just be working somewhere.
Right.
And it all of a sudden what matters is doing something where every single day you get to have that joy and that feeling of giving back.
I've seen that in you, and I admire that about you.
Well, so the way that Pat and I have met is through, it's called RevGen, and what they really help nonprofits create these bonds. And so there is a group that we meet, once a month,
Right.
and really just have this beautiful interconnection. We're able to help problem solve together, and it does create this beautiful bond amongst other nonprofit leaders. And so that's one of the things that really I wanted to do with the reason I started this podcast, was just every time I'm in one of those meetings or at a community gathering, it's just constantly seeing that the DFW area, not only are there so many nonprofits
Right.
doing good work, but there's innovation happening here
Oh, yeah.
that I think is stuff that needs to go broader, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the idea that you have in Serve Denton of let's create this hub for people to do, is that something you're wanting to replicate? Is that,
Well,
you
not
know,
only do we want to, we are.
That's so exciting.
So we have people from across the country coming to see us. So when I started, I thought this is probably a problem every community over a certain size has. And so we got going, and then McKinney came to us about 3 years ago, and they formed One Heart McKinney. And Mayor George Fuller will say, yeah, we've modeled this on Serve Denton. And just recently, the city of Louisville came to us and said, we were thinking about doing this, but we came to visit you, and we would be foolish to try to do it ourselves. So we're now, the city of Louisville is going to give us $2.5 million on a forgivable loan to create Serve Louisville. And so we're under contract to buy a building and renovate it and open it. And then just in the last 2 weeks, I've had Lake Dallas, Kaufman County, Johnson County, Tyler, Decatur, all say, can you come talk to us? So
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's such a great idea, and it's so, you know, one of the things that when we wrote the values, one of the pieces that I'm the most passionate about is the ability to believe in a world of abundance,
right.
and understand that because there is this abundance in the world, you don't have to be in competition
Right.
with other nonprofits.
And I love the way you say that. And I got a lot of adversity when I first started Serve Denton because I was viewed as competition. And I said, no, you're operating out of a mindset of scarcity, and I operate out of a mindset of abundance. I'm not trying to take your piece of the pie. I'm trying to make the pie bigger.
Yes.
And I can honestly say Serve Denton has brought $4.3 million into Denton County from outside Denton County, from across the country. And, you know, my partner agencies will say, we would never be where we are without Serve Denton. And they didn't have to raise that money. I raised it for them. And I mean, they get emotional about it because they were in very dysfunctional, depressing spaces that didn't help them accomplish their mission. And now they have spaces where their employees love to come.
Yes, and that makes such a difference.
And their volunteers love to be there. And most importantly, the clients love to be there. They feel respected and treated with dignity. And that is core to what we believe.
Yeah, it has to be. And I think it's one of those that as you're raising money and you want to be conscious of the budget, but you also, especially for people that feel like they're marginalized, that don't get treated in these
Right.
beautiful, like making the center clean and bright and beautiful and warm, it matters.
It does matter.
And it's showing like, I believe in your humanity and
Yeah.
I want you to have the most beautiful of things. And so I love that you're able to help other smaller nonprofits to create that space.
Yeah, we believe in that so strongly. We have entered into a long-term partnership with the Toyota Motor Corporation.
Okay.
And if you know anything about Toyota, they're considered a very well-managed company. And if you go into their plants, it's immaculate. And so we use a lot of their principles. And when people walk in, the first reaction is, wow, I didn't expect this. And that's really what I want for not only our partner staffs, but more like you just said, the clients. To want them to feel safe and secure and cared for there.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, that makes me so happy. And I'm so glad to hear that you are expanding this. And, it's something that if, people hear on this and they want to know how do they start creating that in the community. I'm assuming your website is the first place to go?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a website that not only provides information about the organization, but we also have a portal or a link. So if any community or nonprofit ever wants to consult with us or have us help them think through that, they can go in there, and it's called Shared Services. And we have a wonderful lady named Dr. Nora Douglas who runs that for us. And we do financial management, we do development, we do nonprofit center planning and development, and then also planning and evaluation for different programs.
That's great. And then talking about the shared services piece too,
Yeah.
because I remember there was one time where I was trying to figure out one of the many, COVID relief tax craziness,
Right.
and you had said you have, in-house programs like
Right.
that. What other kind of programs do you do to support the nonprofits? So you have obviously this beautiful space that you
Sure.
give them, but what other kind of supports do you provide?
Well, we do a lot behind the scenes. So we have, our value proposition is we're going to provide a high quality space at an affordable cost, and we're going to be responsive to your needs, and we're going to give you a supportive community. And so I love how you think about and talk about collaboration, and what we learned, and we were part of a study by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And what we came to learn is we focused on collaboration a lot, but there's a precursor to collaboration, and that's connection. We have to understand one another's value and build trust, and collaboration happens at the speed of trust. And so we spend a lot of time building connections, and most of that's over food.
Always.
So
Food helps break down all barriers.
It does. So we have things like Grubhub, where everyone eats lunch together. We'll do events throughout the month, social events. We call networking events. So we call our partners a network, and then within those we do professional education classes, all free. They just have to show up. We're working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're working on, various skill sets from personal finance to grant writing to personal security.
Yeah.
And we use those events to obviously educate, but also to get folks talking and connecting.
Yeah.
And out of those connections, we don't tell the agencies what to do. We let the collaboration happen very organically. And I truly believe that's the best way to promote that. My job is to create the ecosystem and then let them do what they do best.
I love that. And I love that you're willing to help create other ecosystems, whether that's managed by you
Yeah.
or like you've talked about through consulting or helping people figure out, well, how do I create something that is an ecosystem in that?
Absolutely.
So you always ask about, do you have a favorite story, whether that's about a specific nonprofit or a collaboration that happened or something? Do you have any, particularly when you're just thinking about, like, this is the one that makes me so happy? Is there something that comes to mind?
There's dozens. So I'm going to give you two short ones. The first one is in the height of the pandemic, Health Service North Texas was doing drive-through vaccinations, and we had terrible weather, and the food center just said, hey, we're going to open up our food center. They were closed, but they're going to open it up. And so they did the drive-through through the food center, and the HSNT folks were just thrilled to be undercover and out of the weather. And that was like literally within 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We were not even part of it. We just heard about it after the fact. Another example is we have these therapists, they're occupational therapists that go out with MHMR of Denton County to work with families who have children with developmental delays in the home. And most of those therapists used to work from restaurants or coffee shops. And now they have an office where they can come back to. And what we have found is they become great eyes and ears for a lot of people who will never darken our door. And they'll go into a home and, like the electricity's off. Well, they'll come back and say, hey, because we have a whole organization, all they do is utility assistance, Texoma Council of Governments. And now we have these micro collaborations that go on all the time. When I talk about Serve Denton, we have four strategic goals: co-location, connections, collaboration, and capacity growth. And when we talk about collaboration, we talk about three flavors. There's shared information.
Flavors, I love that.
Shared information, so we call that coordination. Shared resources, that's cooperation. And shared risk, we call that high-level collaboration. So the whole Serve Denton project was an example of shared risk. So some of our agencies, Children's Advocacy Center for North Texas and the Food Center, gave me $1.3 million and said, we're trusting you to go build us a building. I had the property, I needed their funding, and I brought funding to the table.
Sure.
And I delivered custom design space that meets their very functional needs. And I talked, when we had the grand opening, I talked about that, you know, as you alluded to, there's often this, you know, either or mindset. And I talked about the power of and.
Yeah.
And when we work together, we're able to do something that none of us individually could have done by ourselves. And to me, that's the greatest collaboration that we can see. And now we're starting to see in shared bodies. I share one person with another organization. Half their time is with me, half their time is with that other agency.
I was going to ask if that happens, and particularly in, so, you know, being a very quickly growing, but still, you know, smallish nonprofit, that, you know, some of the resources, it's like, we don't need a full-time CFO yet, right? But if there was another organization, the same, that kind of thing, I could see that happening with a lot of, especially things like grant writing or accounting or some of those things that's hard to have in-house, and especially to have really good talent in-house if you don't have the budget for a giant salary for that. So that's fabulous to hear that people are doing that.
Yeah, I have a lot of fractional employees, and so part of shared service is giving their expertise, and you know, they have 30 or 40 years of experience that I could never afford to have, but I get them part-time, and then they are able to do that with other agencies as well, and it just makes everyone stronger, and those people love doing it. They find purpose and meaning, and they're, you know, they're retired, but they don't want to retire to the golf course. They want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and you know, I'm seeing that too, as we have a couple of staff members who are kind of, they had their long-term career and then are having this kind of second career in nonprofit to really feed their souls, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's such a great thing. Yeah, I love it. We've talked about, like, we've kind of hopped around all over the place. I know one of the things that I love to do, and that we kind of briefly touched on earlier, but is this concept of saying, you know, when you're taking these, what did you call it? What kind of risk? It's shared risk, right?
Shared risk.
But in a lot of ways, just growing a nonprofit internally, there is shared risk there.
Oh, there is.
We're all going in, and we're gonna, and it gets messy.
It does.
And you try stuff, and then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh, that was terrible. But but this concept of, you know, one of the things I really try to help my staff with is that if you're not messing up, then you're not growing.
You're not
trying.
Yeah.
And it's gonna get messy, and it's gonna be hard, and you're gonna, you know, write something upside down on the note card and then have to put another note card in front of it. But you know, that stuff happens.
It does.
And to as, you know, as a leadership team, to say, that's okay.
Right.
And not only are we not gonna yell at you or punish you, we're gonna celebrate. Like, all right, let's put them out on the table.
Yeah.
So we called that Failed So Hards, and we do them at the top of our staff meetings. But you said you guys have something similar, but you have a different name for it.
Yeah, so we call it FAIL reports, and FAIL stands for First Attempt in Learning.
I love that.
And I'm a huge proponent of fail as fast as you can. Because the faster you learn, the more successful you're going to be. And people often will talk about, well, Serve Denton, you've gone so far and so fast. And I'll be very quick to point out, the path to Serve Denton's success is paved with failures. And there's so many mistakes we've made along the way, but we have a process internally called plan, do, check, adjust. Plan, do, check, and adjust.
Wait, plan,
do, check, and adjust. Okay. That's something we've learned from Toyota, but we use that problem-solving methodology, and we learn to embrace failure. And sometimes adjust can be, we adopt it, we adjust it, or we abandon it. And we just, like, recent example is we had put in a sound masking system between two agencies because of some bleed over of noise. And so we put in this system in the hallway and hope it would create white noise that would eliminate that carryover. Well, total failure.
So what was it? Was it like whale sounds instead of white noise?
It was just air conditioning, but it wasn't blocking the sounds. And we realized, we probably need, the consultant said put it in the hallway. The technician who installed it said, no, you really need to put it in the office. And so that's an example. That's not a big example, but we constantly are just looking for those little improvements. And when people feel like it's okay to fail, that is very liberating. And they know I'm not a micromanager. And so we start off staff meeting, and we'll do what's roses, thorns, and buds. What's your roses? What are you going to celebrate for this past week? Thorns, where did we fail? And what are the buds? What are the things we're hopeful for? And I even wrote in our annual report two big picture failures.
Yeah.
Where we weren't able to deliver something as fast as we promised. There were some financial decisions we had to make because that resulted in that. But I own those. Those are on me, and I think that example is liberating and encouraging to the staff.
I think so too, and I think it also creates just that trust
Right.
of sharing and going. I, as the CEO, look, it happens to me too. It happens to us all, and that we're on this journey together.
Right.
And that is, I think organizations that have the quick growth also have this okay, we got to try stuff and we figure it out. So, Pat, it's been so nice talking
Same
to you.
here, Natalie.
Once again, give us your website, and is there anything coming up that you want people to know about?
Yeah, so servedenton.org is our website. Right now, we're kind of working towards North Texas Giving Day.
Us too.
And we're going to have
You guys will be hearing a lot more about that very soon.
Yeah, an event on a new courthouse in Denton for all the agencies to have, for folks to come out. We're going to make lots of games and food trucks, and
Awesome.
It's not so much about raising the money. It's just about getting people exposed to the agencies.
Yep.
And giving visibility. And then we have on September 24th, we're having our 10th birthday party called
Yay.
Celebration.
Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you. It's going to be a roaring 20s, and we have a 10-piece band playing, and just to celebrate, from very humble beginnings. And you were there.
Yeah.
It was just you and no one else. And so it's very gratifying to look back and see what God and a lot of other people have done through Serve Denton. So
I love it. Congratulations. Thank you again for joining
You're
this
welcome.
conversation.
My pleasure.
I hope you guys all, got something from this, and just one more example of that way that when we work together, we can change this world a lot faster. And really appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time.
Culture of Caring with Natalie Boyle is brought to you by Mommies in Need, a nonprofit organization with the mission of caring for kids so that families can access health care. The podcast is hosted by Natalie Boyle, produced by Tabitha Evans and Real News Communications Network. If you have an idea for a topic or guest, or want to share a #FailedSoHard moment, email us at coc@mommiesinneed.org. Please remember to rate, like, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Video versions of the podcast are available on YouTube.